Shut up and sit down.
Hey guys, I'm Sai, and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. On the channel, we've got interviews, podcast series, and content on a variety of subjects, including mental health, football, serial killers, films and TV, conspiracy theories, writing, music, and more. All our shows are available in video format at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation or audio at all the usual podcasting platforms. So today's show, something a little bit different. Instead of the usual format, this is episode 2 in our new series, Unscripted and Uncensored. We had the first show with Rodri Giggs, which came out last week or 2 weeks ago, when this goes out. And basically, we just get some talking points, subjects, and questions sent in by people on Twitter, Facebook, and all our social media sites, and we just talk. So it could be a lot of fun, could go off the rails real quick, which is, that adds to the fun and makes it all the more entertaining. As my friend said, he's just looking forward to watching me squirm as I talk about things which I said I wasn't going to talk about on the podcast. So my guest today is former MMA fighter who's fought in a whole host of different companies, including the UFC, former champion and founder of VT Jiu-Jitsu, Mr. I just asked you how to pronounce your surname, and my mind's gone blank. It's Mr. Leigh Remedios.
That's it. Yep, you got it.
I literally asked you like 20 seconds ago, and then when I went into all my spiel, I just went, because I've been saying it a different way all day. So there we go. Thank you for coming on, Leigh. Anyway, how are you, mate?
No worries, thanks for having me. I'm a little bit tired. I've just done a judo competition, and I had to cut some weight for it. Not a lot, but I've had to diet down, so I'm a little bit drained at the moment, but I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
No, that's good. It's, I think that's one of the. I'll tell you what, we'll get into it now, because weight cutting is one of the things which I just got on my long list of subjects which people sent in. Okay. So yeah, we're in the hands of the people now. So could be good, could be bad, could be mayhem. We'll see how it goes.
I have no idea what they are, right? So let's just.
Yeah, no, I've just got a list. Just literally got a list of stuff. Right. Some of them are questions, some of them are subjects.
Okay.
No editing, no censors. Pretty much say what you want. Anything goes.
Okay.
Okay. So one thing I did do is when I was getting them all together from the different posts, is I kind of put them into pretty much so they're all together. So we're not getting from one MMA question, then going through a load of other stuff, and then going back to MMA.
Yep.
Because I know, obviously, when I'd spoken to our mutual friend, or Reese, who does the conspiracy theory shows and the serial killer shows with me, he had sort of said, you've done so many MMA interviews and podcasts that maybe you don't want to talk about MMA for an hour.
Yeah, well, I mean, and more for you as well. I've done quite a few MMA podcasts and interviews. Yours wouldn't stand out then, right? You'd be, well, I've already spoken about this stuff, right?
Yeah, of course.
People would be interested in hearing.
So, so first subject, Conor McGregor.
Okay.
Where do you stand on Conor McGregor in terms of all time to start with? Do you think he's one of the best ever? Do you think he's overhyped?
Right. So we're talking as a fighter, right? At this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's fantastic. As a fighter, I think he's really, really good. He's obviously very athletic. He's got phenomenal timing and power and accuracy. And his grappling is a lot better than people think. I think when you watch the guy, he knows his stuff. He's very hard to take down. He's competed in the European No-Gi Championships for Jiu-Jitsu, and he didn't look out of place. I think he's a really, really talented fighter. To win titles in 2 divisions in the UFC, that's pretty rare, right?
Yeah, I think you've got to have a certain level of talent and ability to do that. I think when he was coming up, sort of up to maybe the Aldo fight, I feel like he was hungry then, and he wanted it. He just wanted it more than anyone, because he had come from being on sort of benefits or social security in Ireland and being completely skint, and his missus supporting him so that he could train to be an MMA fighter, and then obviously going through Cage Warriors and then into the UFC. I do feel a bit like since the Mayweather fight, where, and I think at the end of the day, like you'll be able to tell me more so, getting punched in the face every day training and getting punched in the face is not fun, and kicked and whatever. It's not fun. And if you've just been paid $100 million or 100 million quid, I think it's going to take a certain level of motivation to get back into fighting again after that, because especially for him, it seems like, he's obviously passionate about MMA, but he wanted to be the best ever, and he wanted to break records, and he wanted to make money along the way doing it. And I feel like since the Mayweather fight, he hasn't quite been the same. Would you say that's fair to say?
You could be right, and I'm not going to disagree with you. But since the Mayweather fight, who's he fought? He came back and he had a fight against Habib, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and Habib was fantastic. Habib, in my opinion, is one of the best ever. So Conor had 2 years out of MMA, came back in, jumped straight in against Habib. I mean, okay, yeah, he looked less than stellar, but I mean that it really is to be expected. I think.
Yeah. Do you think?
I mean,
Do you think he
tough
worried?
fight.
Do you think he worried a bit too much about? And I know that's easy to say because Khabib is unbeaten and he just mauls everyone, but I almost felt like he didn't do the things that had got him to the dance. Like his counter punching wasn't as sharp, and his move, he wasn't as light on his feet. And I don't know whether he just, when I watched, because I watched it back again, I think it was last week, and he didn't, all the things that you'd come to sort of expect from him in every fight, like those sharp counter punches and just the timing of the counter punches as well, where as his opponent's moving in to do, to go for the clinch or the grapple, he was very precise in his counter punches, and I felt like it seemed on the second watch almost as if he perhaps was so concerned about being taken to the ground that he didn't play his normal game, if you like.
Well, I mean, it's easy for you and I to sit back in our armchairs.
It's easier for me to say who's never fought as well, but.
Well, I mean, I haven't done MMA for a few years, and certainly not fought anyone at Conor's level. But what you're saying is what his coach John Kavanagh said. I'm friends with John Kavanagh, so I don't want to try and say anything that's going to make him feel or look bad, because I like the guy genuinely. Like we are mates. And I don't think I would be really if I said because I can just repeat what John said. John said that they did focus probably too much on defense rather than offense. They were defending too much in camp against the takedown, against Habib's grappling, rather than working on Conor being offensive. So yeah, what you say is the same thing that they themselves identified. So I think there's probably something in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to look at him, he was waiting to be shot in on. He wasn't. You're exactly right. He didn't go out there. He didn't stalk Habib down like he does. He goes out, he stalks his opponents, and then he starts punching the shit out of them. Oh, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, crack on. Yeah, just uncensored, whatever.
Yeah, and he punches the shit out of people, right? He hits really hard, and he didn't even try to do that against Habib. So yeah, I mean, that's what it would appear to me. It's how it appears to you, and it's what John Kavanagh himself has said. It's also what Conor has confirmed as well. So it's probably the case.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I was most looking forward to from that fight was seeing if Khabib could take Conor's left hand, because he's steamed through the majority of the roster, sometimes in one or two punches.
Yeah.
And no one's really done that to Khabib, where they've sort of put him under a great deal of pressure. There's been the odd one, like Al Iaquinta put him under a bit of pressure for a while, but I mean, no one really has sort of been able to turn the screws on it, which says a lot about his ability, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like Habib has that rare ability to be able to shoot out of distance. He can take you down from halfway across the cage, which is crazy, right? So people don't get to set their feet. They don't get to move. They don't get to get their angles. They don't get to try and get ready to land these big shots, because they're on the back foot. If they plant their feet to throw, then they're getting punched or taken down, right? If they try and dance around him, he pins them against the fence and takes them down anyway. So he's a very, very difficult guy to hit, simply because his wrestling offense is so fantastic.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm looking forward to his next fight as well. I think it's going to be a really big test for him. But again, same with him and Conor now. Have had such a big break. That's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel that he should have had almost like a tune-up fight before he faced Khabib?
I'm sure he would have liked to have done, or I'm sure his coach would have liked him to have done, but not always an option, really. I think when you're that big a name and you're that big a superstar and you've just won the title, then in incredible fashion, he beat Eddie Alvarez, who I really, really rate. I think Eddie's fantastic, and Conor beat him he beat him badly, right? I mean, he just beat him up, beat him down. And then he's won the title. Then he goes and fights the best boxer in the world, and does all right. Yeah, he lost, but he did all right. He can't come back and fight a number 8 or 9 on rankings. I mean, he's Conor McGregor. He sells a lot of tickets. People want to come to see him in big, exciting fights. He's really got to come back in against the top guys, and it's always going to be tough.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is as well is in any fighting game is you can lose any fight if you're not switched on, as we saw with Andy Joshua recently. No one expected him to lose that fight, and he's now not unbeaten anymore. And if McGregor had gone in looking to Khabib, but taken what he saw as a tune-up fight and wasn't on his game, he could have got caught or whatever, and it ruins the big pay-per-view fight, the grudge match a bit then, doesn't it? It takes the edge off it, certainly.
Yeah, well, I think with as well though, I mean, it's on Conor that's happened though, because his personality is so big that's what he only ever wants to shoot for the top, right? And so where I said he probably would have loved a tune-up fight, I mean, probably his coach would have preferred him to have a tune-up fight. I expect Conor was probably eager to jump back at the top, because that's the sort of guy that he seems to be. I mean, I don't know him, but he seems to want to have a title fight immediately. When he started fighting in the UFC, he kept pushing and pushing, chasing Aldo down. He just wants to fight the best guys. He wants to fight the best guys in the world, and you've got to respect that. That he's not ducking anyone, and he will fight everyone. He'll fight the best guys he can fight. But the flip side to that is, if you have a little bit of time out, you don't get a chance to have those tune-up fights.
Yeah, and I think with, like, again, I'm not an MMA fighter. I've never trained, never did anything like that. But to me, it does more so than boxing, because there's so many different tools and aspects to it. Is if you have a prolonged amount of time out with it, the game changes. There's someone like Israel Adesanya, butchered that name, and people like that who change the game again.
Yes.
There's always, it's always moving on, isn't it? And I think 2 years or whatever it was without fighting, and I think it's probably going to be over that now if he fights again. It's a long time. Do you think he'll fight again? The problem, I think, is he would I think he wants to fight Khabib again.
Yep.
And I think most people, whether it's Dana White or fans or pundits or other fighters, or I think most people think he should have to fight someone else first to collect a win, because he was beaten soundly.
The bigger issue may be his legal issues that he's got coming up.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to shit talk the guy, because I don't know him, and everyone's innocent until proven guilty, right? But he's got some pretty serious stuff coming up, I think. So
yeah, and I think that's
more of a factor.
Yeah, because you just don't know. There's no way to predict what's going to happen with that sort of thing.
No,
because you just don't know, because if nothing sort of comes of it, then he could be fighting in 6 months.
Yeah.
If something does come for it, he could never fight again. So I think.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
In my mind, that's a bigger issue. I mean, I don't want to start talking about stuff that's not really my place to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's out there. I mean, it's in the public domain now. And he's got some pretty serious allegations against him. So he's probably got to manage. Whether it's right or wrong, whether it's fair or not, he's probably got to deal with those before much happens, I would have thought.
I'd like to see him fight Donald Cerrone. I think that would be an incredible bit of a barn burner.
Yeah, right.
I
think, judging by his last fight, Donald, and I hate to say this because I think he's great as well, he looks like, Father Time's catching up with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And against someone like Conor, if Conor's still sharp, and you can't be half a beat behind. You get your cock cleaned. That said, if Cerrone's on form, he looks amazing. And it could be a great fight. You're right.
Yeah, up until that last fight, Cerrone had been on a bit of a streak, and seemed like he was, he's always been game, and he'll go like punch for punch with anyone. But after a bit of a rough spell, he seemed to have got a bit of a streak going, and he was looking sharp. And then that last fight, he just, like you say, he just looked a bit slower, and not as sharp.
I mean, maybe he had a bad weight cut or something. I don't know. He didn't look himself. He did look a bit slower, and maybe it's wrong to make the assumption, but you kind of start to think straight away. He's been in the game a long time. Is it catching up with him? Maybe not. Maybe it was something else. Because you're right. Before that, he had a really nice streak going. He was looking fantastic. So I mean, I don't know. I think, but I agree with you that a prime Cerrone versus a prime Conor would be a great fight.
Do you think with people like Cerrone, who have got that style where they've had fights where they'll literally go like punch for punch, or and it almost becomes just a back and forth of strikes, that's got to take its toll over the years, when you've been doing it for as long as he has, just being hit in the face and the head repeatedly.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of leads on to another topic that I got asked to bring up, but I don't know if it's been mentioned to you, from Gary Turner, who's talking about head contact and head trauma.
Is that the one who said about the head trauma with kids?
Yes.
Yeah. That's on my list. I'm quite it's not something that I know a great deal about, but I'm interested in.
Well, me either, to be honest. Gary was going to send me some information before, so I could prep for this, because he said that he'd mentioned it, right? So I didn't know if it was going to come up. But it's a point to discuss. But I'm not a doctor, and I don't know a lot about it, other than, yes, I agree with you that a lot of head trauma is not going to be good for you. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, you don't need to be a doctor to know that being booted around the chops a lot of times, is going to take its toll on you. I think you'd probably be surprised at how little damage Cerrone has taken over his career, though. Of course, he's been in a lot of fights. He gets hit a lot, and you're right. It looks like he's taking a good beating, but he moves really well, and the subtleties you'll see. Of course, I don't want to downplay it, because he has had some big shots. He has taken some big shots. but maybe not as many as you might think. Like the little head movements, the angles, the feints, the distancing, it can really take the sting off a shot. Much more than you might think. So, and he's really good at that. If you watch, his head's always moving. His feet are always moving a little bit, just enough to to take the edge off the shots that he's eating.
Yeah, I think he's what I call a bleeder as well. Is that sometimes he can get caught with a point of an elbow or something, and he will bleed quite heavily without it actually being as bad as perhaps it looks. Easy for me to say, man. So just finishing on Conor McGregor, I was going to ask. When I was looking up some stuff about you and where you'd fought and stuff, did I see you fought John Kavanagh?
Yeah.
Back when?
John and I fought, what was it, 2001 maybe beginning 2002?
Yeah,
a long time. I mean, we're old men now, right? But we did fight, back in the day, almost 2 decades ago.
Okay, so that moves me on to my next, the next one of the questions. I wish I'd kept, when I was trying to copy and paste them all, because it was all from 4 or 5 posts and retweets and stuff. I wish I'd kept the people who'd sent them, but I haven't. So okay. I apologize to all the people who did send them, because we had loads of stuff. So the next one was someone asked, did you get nervous before fights?
Yeah, really bad as well. Not so much near the end of my career, but near the beginning, really, really badly. And I've never been afraid of my opponent. I've never looked at a guy and thought, oh, he's going to smash my face in. I'm not afraid of anyone, but I'm not a performer. I'm not an actor. I don't go on stage. That's not my thing. I just want to fight. I didn't. My first ever one, I went out there and I think there was probably about 500 people there in a warehouse, and they're all around the ring, and they're all cheering for you or booing for you or whatever, right? But all their eyes are on you, and I'm like, geez, what's going on here? And I had a stage fright, and it's something that I never really, really ever enjoyed. With having a crowd there, and when you lose in MMA, then it goes on your record, right? So that's quite a big factor for you. You go out there and it's on your mind the whole time. I've got to win. I want to build my record. I don't want to destroy it. And that, there's a lot of pressure on you from a lot of things that people don't always think about. And nowadays, MMA seems quite glamorous and mainstream, but when I was doing it, a lot of it was illegal. It was underground. I fought in a lot of bare knuckle underground matches, and it wasn't because I wanted to be famous. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want my face all over TV or anything. And it wasn't right. I mean, I was doing it because I wanted to fight. So I got very nervous of the event, but never of the actual fight itself. I was never afraid to fight one. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think as well. I played football and cricket, which I realize is nowhere near the fighting, but I played it up until a teenager to a pretty high standard, and no matter how many I played thousands of games at all different levels, and it was a weekly thing of playing a few times a week, playing with the same people. But every time you'd have a big game or a big match or whatever, that's sitting in the change rooms, just waiting and the team talking, and you've got butterflies because I don't know. There's no way to explain it because you've done it a million times and you know what's coming. And like you say, you're not worried necessarily about the fight. So I wasn't worried about the game coming up. I knew what my job was, and I knew that I was capable of doing it.
Yeah,
it's just the butterflies.
Yeah,
and I think
and that's not different to me. I know you say, "Oh, mine's different because MMA," but it's not, because I wasn't afraid of the fight, so that wasn't a factor. It was the performance. It could have been any event. It could be any sport that I was doing. So it's the same thing that you got. It's the same thing that I got. Right? That's what it was. I wasn't afraid of being beaten up. I mean, I got beaten up a few times. Don't get me wrong. But that isn't what I was afraid of. It was the same thing that you're afraid of.
Fighting aspect of it.
Yeah. It was the performance, right? I will say I'd noticed a huge advantage people that competed in other combat sports when they were younger switching to MMA. They had an advantage over me. I think the people that did a lot of judo or a lot of wrestling or maybe a lot of boxing or kickboxing, because they dealt with nerves a lot more than me. Whereas my real competition experience was MMA. I did some other little bits before that, but mainly it was MMA. So I was just kind of thrown in with no prior experience of competition, and I think that was probably a disadvantage. And now, when my guys compete, I get them to do some jiu-jitsu matches first, do some competitions where it's no record, doesn't really matter if you win or lose. Nice to win, but if you don't, no problem. Just get them out there competing so they get used to competing, and realizing that you can't feel 100% all the time. And if you don't feel great on match day, it's not necessarily the end of the world. All that sort of stuff that comes up, right? Rather than the day happens, you feel a little bit.
First time.
Yeah. Oh, I need to go to the toilet all the time, and then that starts playing on your mind. You got some butterflies. Oh, I feel a bit sick, and so just. That sort of experience, is just getting used to all of that is really important, I think. And you can do that before you start competing, especially in MMA.
Yeah. So, yeah, because you fought in the, I'm trying to go off the top of my head now, which is always lethal, UFC 38, wasn't it, in Royal Albert Hall?
Yeah.
Which, that must have been massive, because that was the first one in the UK, wasn't it? That was the first UFC event in the UK.
Yeah, I was terrified. And backstage, Dana White took me aside and he said, "Look, it's clear there's something wrong with you. You're really, really nervous." And I said, "No, I'm going to fight. Don't worry, I'm here to fight. I'm going to fight." He's like, "Good." He goes, "But, just remember, it's just like any other fight." And he was trying to give me some words, just to calm me down, because it was clear that I was pacing. I was really nervous, because you look out there, Royal Albert Hall full of people. I wasn't worried about fighting Genki Sudo. I mean, very good. I wasn't afraid of him, but 5,000 people filling the Royal Albert Hall, right? That's however many were there, right? That's what I didn't like. I'm looking out through the curtain. Jesus, there's a lot of people here, right?
Yeah, and I think it's as an Englishman as well. Royal Albert Hall has got a lot of history as well, isn't it? So
yes.
And because it was the first UFC in the UK, and because I was when I was looking at some of the stuff about you, it's I came across an interview which you did. I think it was with the Guardian or the Independent or someone who you'd done in the week prior, in the build-up, and they were asking you about all the political side of it, should it be banned, and I would assume, and that's not the sort of thing you want to be focused on in the week before, in terms of when they're asking you questions. You'd rather talk about the actual fight you're going to have and this, that, and the other.
In the week before, I don't talk about anything.
Yeah.
I just want to focus, or just maybe not focus. I want to try and relax, because all the training's all done. I just want to kind of, put it out of my head and not worry too much. So, I mean, it was part of it, right? But that was something that was relatively new to me at the time, was all the media attention. Because as I said, the fights I'd done had been kind of low level, low key, not always above board. So to have all the media, mainstream media, like these high street newspapers interviewing you, it was kind of crazy. I was on I can't remember. I was on one radio channel or two radio channels. Did some interviews, some high profile ones. I don't know if it's BBC. I can't remember. But that was kind of strange as well. Everyone else is making a much bigger deal of it than I want it to be. I just wanted to fight.
Yeah, but I suppose at that point, the UFC in this country didn't have the best reputation, because they'd only just sort of started bringing in the weight classes and the rules, and it had been a bit more brutal. So there was this, you had all the politicians, and you still get them a little bit now. Sometimes I hear them on Talk Sport going on about if there's a bad knockout on a Saturday in the UFC, they'll be in there on the Monday, Talk Sport, saying it should be banned and it's brutal and it's this, that, and the other.
That's the thing. So I had the Sun newspaper trying to interview me, but they didn't interview me before, and they'd written a load of just nonsense about MMA, right, in the past. And then they're trying to interview me again. I got nothing to say to you. I don't get anything out of it from speaking to you. You're not going to pay me, right? And I couldn't give a shit about being respected by your newspaper or by your readers, right? Piss off. You guys are so two-faced. You've totally slated my sport, the sport I'm passionate about, and now you want to do an interview with me, right? And then they're saying, oh, this is your chance to put your version across and put it. I know that you're going to misquote me. I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Right? I'm no interest in speaking you bunch of idiots, right? So yeah, that was something that was going on as well.
Yeah, I got very, very little respect for the Sun newspaper, to be fair.
Awful brag.
It just, yeah, I didn't even want to speak about it, and that's how I got so little respect for them. It's just,
yeah.
So next question was, what is more satisfying, KO or submission?
Right. So in competitive MMA, I only have one TKO win. My other stoppages are by submission, mainly by submission. So I haven't knocked anyone out really in MMA. I got one TKO win, and that's it. Outside of that, like in the gym and stuff, it's happened, but kind of keep it behind closed doors, because it just it accidentally happens in training, and that's definitely not a satisfying thing. Oh, hang on, I banged out my training partner. But so I'm probably not the best person to give an answer for this one, but I would say probably a submission. The reason being is, and I'm not going to say that knocking someone out doesn't take skill, because of course it does, right? I haven't been able to do it, right? So I mean, obviously I'm lacking there somewhere. But I think having someone tap leaves it completely out of the question. Now, of course, if someone's knocked out, it's out of the question as well. Of course, right? But sometimes a KO on the record might have actually been a TKO. Maybe it's an early stoppage. Maybe the guy protested it, right? And maybe he's wrong to protest it. Maybe it was clear, But if someone taps, there is no question. It's done. They've acknowledged that you're the winner. So that's why I would always hunt the submission if I could.
Yeah, I guess you can be lucky with a KO as well, can't you? You could catch someone sort of a bit jammily. I know that's easy again for me to say, and like it does take a tremendous amount of skill to be able to knock, a professional fighter out. But you can get the odd kind of lucky, like a lucky shot, can you? Like a puncher's chance, I guess is what you'd say.
So some people say that there's no such thing as a lucky punch. You intended to throw it, you intended it to land, and it landed, right? So I understand that point of view, but by definition, there is such a thing as a lucky punch. Like, is it a rare opportunity? Is it if you threw that punch 10 times, would it have landed 10 times? No, it would have landed one time. Well, then it by definition is lucky, right? Because it was a rare event that worked out in your favor. So yes, punches can be lucky, but and it sounds cliched, but factually, this is by definition, it's true. The more you train, the luckier you'll get. And I know that sounds like a cheesy line. People say, the more I train, the luckier I get. But that's true. The more you train, the more accurate you get, the better your timing becomes, and the more likely you are to land the punches or the techniques that you're trying to get off. So all of sports is statistic based, really. You're playing a game of chance, but you stack the odds in your favor in every game, right? And if you're much better than your opponent, then the odds are stacked heavily in your favor, right? So you're going to be a lot luckier than your opponent is most of the time, right? So yes, I definitely see what you're saying. You could get a lucky punch, you could land a shot and knock someone out when ordinarily it wouldn't have happened, whereas that's a lot less likely with a submission. But I still think that knocking someone out does take a tremendous amount of skill, really, or natural talent. I guess if you're like Lee Murray and you're gifted with the ability to put people into orbit with every punch, right? Then But even I know Lee trained a lot too, right? To be able to pull that off on good MMA fighters, you've got to train really, really hard. So I think it may be kind of taking something away from guys that win by knockout to say that they're getting a bit lucky. Which I know you didn't say that. I know you didn't, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So
that's my thoughts on lucky punches as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So this one was sent in on Twitter, and they wanted to know, was Danny Batten really injured? So before you answer that, maybe fill in the people why they're asking that, because I came across it earlier. Why? But go on, I'll let you explain it.
Okay, so years ago. I was supposed to fight Danny Batten. He was really, really good. He probably still is. You know, I mean, he's now black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was a good striker at the time as well. So he's a very good fighter. And he'd beaten a lot of guys, a lot of good guys. And I was quite a well-known guy at the time, fighting. And I was ranked quite high. We were both ranked quite high, and we were due to fight each other. And it'd been a bit of back and forth whether it was going to happen or not, because different promotions were saying, well, we want to host it, and then other ones were saying, no, we want to host it. We finally got it agreed that we were going to fight on Cage Rage. After a lot of back and forth, not really between me and Danny. Danny's always been cool with me, so I don't want to say anything bad about him. But it was on the Cage Warriors forum, on their internet forum, and he had this guy. I'm gonna give him a shout out as well, Jerry C. Who used to kind of shit talk me over Danny Batten, right? And he used to go on and on about how Danny was going to beat me up and all this sort of stuff, right? And I did it back to him. I said, no, I'm going to slap him silly, right? And, you know, there's a lot of back and forth between me and this guy who was effectively just an internet troll.
Yeah.
So, but it was funny. Anyway, Danny pulled out the fight on like 2 weeks' notice. So the fight we hyped for ages, and then we were going to fight. And then on a week or 2 weeks' notice, it was really near the event. He pulled out. So he said he had an injury. But that kind of puts me in an awkward position, in a bad position, because now it's too late for me to really get a credible opponent. You know, it was going to be a high profile title fight. It's kind of dropped me in it. Now, he's injured. I get that. It happens. I'm not going to hold that against him, right? But with all the smack talk that had gone on, right? I said, well, I'd like to know exactly what happened to him. Why has he had to pull out? That's dropped me in this position, right? You know, because you know, it's just a courtesy if he tells me what's happened. You know, I mean, he's had to pull out the fight. I've done a camp. I've done a weight cut. I've put all this stuff in, all this training. You know, he should really at least have the decency to tell me what's going on. And this guy comes and goes, he doesn't owe you anything, and you know, you don't need to know. Right? Okay. Well, maybe I got a question. Is he really injured? Right? And this discussion on the forum just went absolutely huge. I mean, there was like well over 1,000, maybe a couple of thousand posts or something, people replying to it and arguing and going back and forth. It was huge. It became kind of legendary within the tiny little community of MMA in the UK on the internet. Right. So that's what that's referring to. It's a specific on an internet forum, right? That a bit of trolling that went completely overboard. That's that. So if you weren't involved in it, it just seems like something silly, probably. But it's funny at the time.
So, did you find out what his injury was eventually?
Not from him, I don't think. Or maybe he had or did he do a back? Did he do his back in or something? I think someone did. He did a podcast, I think, with Dan Strauss, and he might have mentioned he had a back injury. I don't know. I don't doubt that he was injured.
Yeah, no.
I mean, he was a fantastic fighter. He fought some really good guys. He didn't duck anyone. He certainly wasn't trying to duck me. That's not the case, right? You know, but it was just internet banter, right? You know.
Yeah, more responding to someone who had been giving you a bit of shit on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I gave it as well. So I mean, I wasn't the victim.
No.
Let's make that clear.
It's all fun and games. So, next subject is AJ or Fury. Oof. So moving away from MMA to boxing.
Yeah, in my mind, Tyson Fury is by far the superior boxer. It is not close. It's not in any realm of being close. I think the skill level is leagues apart. That said, I would have said the same thing about Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. And watching the fight, I'd say the same thing. But Fury can, as we saw in his last fight, his last fight did mauled the guy. But as we saw in his fight with Deontay Wilder, but he had time off, I get it, but he could be a little bit lazy in the fight. So he held back quite a lot when he could have gone in. I think he threw a couple of rounds away just through inactivity. He was clearly a better boxer, but he didn't push the pace. He didn't score. And he took a couple of punches off a guy that punches really hard, and it put him down. And he got back up great, you know. And I still thought he won the fight, but it was close, you know. And AJ, is that exact guy. He's a real big, strong, athletic guy who hits really hard, and he's made a career of it. He won Olympic gold for it. He has beaten up a lot of fighters by being a big, strong, athletic guy who hits really hard. And we've seen that it can cause Fury problems. That said, I would still quite heavily favour Tyson Fury because I fully believe skills pay the bills, and I'm not going to have that a big, strong guy is going to beat up a very, very skillful fighter. Just because you're big and strong isn't going to mean that you're going to beat a guy with a lot of skill. I'm not going to have it.
No, I think basically if Fury's focused and switched on, I would have Fury every day of the week because I've never been a huge.
And I was just going to say, and on the flip side of that, like whilst I've said that we've seen that Fury can be susceptible to an athletic guy who punches really hard, we have also now seen that Anthony Joshua can be susceptible to a guy who may not look the part, but really does have some boxing skills. We've seen that, right? And that's definitely Fury. Fury definitely has the skills. If a technical boxer can get inside and box him up and put him down and stop him, well, that's Fury all over.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of AJ. I kind of like, he's clearly got power and he's clearly quick. He's so quick for his size. He's someone who's so big. But I kind of feel like he's fought a lot of, and I don't like to describe him as many people do as bums because I believe that they deserve a bit more respect than that. Yeah. But like that, he has fought a lot of people who are not perhaps at the top of the boxing game
in there with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Even when he fought Klitschko, and let's be clear, the Klitschko which fought Fury and the Klitschko which fought AJ, there was quite a big difference. He had aged and he had gone a lot slower, and even he troubled AJ. And at one point, I thought AJ was going to lose, and it was only he sort of made a bit of a comeback. Fury, I was never a massive fan of him. It used to irritate me a lot, but I respected his boxing. I felt was always when he was switched on, I always felt like he could have the ability to be one of the best. But I felt like his attitude let him down a little bit.
Yeah.
However, saying that,
absolutely agreed. But he switched that round. I know that's what you're about to say, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he switched it around, and he donated his purse, to mental health and stuff like this. He seems like a different character now. I absolutely agree with you. When he was smack talking everyone, and really being quite insulting about it. It seems like it can put you off. I get that. But now I think maybe he's a different guy with great boxing skills. I think. In my mind, it's clearly Fury's fight.
Yeah, it's Fury's fight to lose, isn't it? I think. But when Fury got to the top and he became like the champ, when he sort of went off the rails a bit, and everything went wrong for him, I felt like that did kind of take away from his achievement. But looking back in hindsight now, it's a great story where he's come back and he's doing all this work for sort of mental health charities and mental health awareness, and it shows that even someone at the very top of their profession and their sport and can have millions and millions of pounds doesn't mean that you can't have mental health issues.
Yeah.
And if he goes, I really, really am hoping that AJ doesn't lose again and sort of fade like what's his name did, Amir Khan did, where he's kind of lost once, then he'd win, and then he'd lose, and then he'd win, which I know that can happen, but I really would like to see them fight in the next year or two and have it be like top billing as without them having lost along the way to really see. Because AJ's young as well. So he has got that to learn if he's got the ability to learn from his mistakes.
Well, I get that, right? And I get that. I get your point, and I see where you're coming from. That you'd like to see them both do well and then meet at the end of it and really determine it. That'd be great from a fan point of view. But the reality is, this is fighting, right? And as we've seen, anything can happen in a fight, right? You might end up fighting some little short pudgy Mexican who happens to have had a trillion amateur fights and lost 2 of them or something, right? Whatever the guy had, it was something crazy like that, right? And he stops you, dead in your tracks, says the end of your hype train. That's the end of that, right? He's put the brakes on that one. This is fighting and anything can happen. So whilst from a fan point of view, that would be great to see. Maybe it will.
Don't know, do you? Yeah. I'd like to see them face each other, but it does feel a bit like Joshua he's not in a hurry, is he, to face Fury, shall we say? It does seem that way. Whether it's whether it's his managers and his people who are perhaps aware of the danger of facing him, I don't know, but they don't seem keen.
And you can't blame them. If I was his manager, I'm thinking, how can I make money out of this guy? I'd be thinking, keep him away from Fury.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be thinking. I'd be thinking, get him some more easy fights, make him look unstoppable. Because the people that buy the pay-per-views or buy the tickets, I don't want to insult anyone, but the majority of them are not boxing experts. They're casual fans, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But they're casual fans who don't know that much about boxing. They like to think they do, and that's great, because that helps the sport build and it helps pay for these guys. But these guys don't really, they don't know that much about it. So all they want to do is see Anthony Joshua knock someone out, innit, mate? Yeah, he banged him out, right? And then they drink a load of beer and throw it around, right? Those are the guys that you're trying to sell tickets to, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And he sells millions, doesn't he? He does sells pay-per-views. So you're right. They want to see a 2-rounder.
Yeah, that's what they should do, right? It sounds terrible, but if you're his manager, you want him to have some easy fights, bang some people out, make headlines, start, sell a lot of tickets. Of course, that's going to get old pretty quick. You can't do that forever because people are going to start talking about it. Like Anthony Joshua's only fighting bums, blah 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 blah, right? But I would be in no rush to put him against Fury straight away. That's my point, and I don't blame them for maybe trying to protect him a little bit from that.
Okay, so last little bit on sort of the actual fighting bit, and then we're going to move on to some more controversial and different subjects now. But I do a mental health and sports series where I've spoken to like ex-footballers and sports psychologists and stuff, and we speak about the pressures on like young players coming into the game, or people retiring, or the media, like pressure of social media and the difference now where everything is instant on the internet. So like if they go out for a drink and stuff, it's filmed because there's people in the pub trying to get a reaction out of them and stuff like this. But a lot of the time, which kind of has come up in nearly every show we've done, is sometimes the struggle that boxers and sometimes fighters have when they retire in staying retired or going on to have some sort of issues, after they retire. I was just wondering, like, what you think the reason, or what some of the reasons why that might be.
Because, okay, and I can only talk from my own experiences, really. Maybe a few of my friends have done it, but for some of us, when we start fighting, it's because we want to fight. As I said earlier, it's not because, in my case at least, it's not because I wanted to be famous or make a load of money. Obviously that'd be great if I can make a load of cash from fighting, but I make much more as an engineer. But if I could, I fought because I want to fight, and it's so cheesy, but from the Rocky films, you must know the bit I'm gonna talk about. Apollo Creed and Rocky, and they're talking, and Apollo says, "Guys like us," he says, "we have to be in the fight, right?" And when you're a fighter, that's the way it is, and my fellow older fighters out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, You love to fight. You love to test yourself. It's not because I want to go and beat people up. It's not because I want to go and like boot someone's head off, or I just want to, thuggerize someone. That's not the point. But I want to test myself in combat. If I could do that without hurting someone, that'd be great, right? I mean, but generally, combat involves getting hurt and hurting someone. But I want to fight, and so it can be tough, I suppose. And really, at least in my case, I didn't see myself slowing down really until, well, maybe this year I feel my injuries kicking in, but really till quite late in life, I felt athletic and I felt strong and I felt fit. So you'd keep going. I think the bigger issue with aging, rather than being physically too old, is that life catches up with you. You have a family now. I've got children. I've got a job. I've got a wife. And my time is split. I can't be selfish. I can't just focus on fighting and training all the time. And that's probably true for most people. Life catches up with you rather than your body catching up with you. And as you touched on, with Conor McGregor, maybe he's still a prime athlete, but as you said, does he still want it? How much does he want it? He's just fought now at, it's not just, but okay, but he fought Floyd Mayweather for the boxing world title, right? I mean, does it get any bigger than that? Where does he go from there, right? What motivates him now? Like, as you were saying, so I think that's probably got a lot to do with it as well, rather than you getting old and slow.
Yeah,
that's my thoughts on it.
Cool. So, okay. So just we're gonna sticking on sport boxing a little bit, but just moving away from professionally. So like you mentioned, I think it was someone called Gary who had said his direct quote was, "Head impacts for children, is it child abuse?" So
yes, I think it is. Children shouldn't do head contact, really. And it happens most often, I would have thought, with the best of intentions. I've had my kids sparring with headshots. Like my sons have done it, not very much, and with big gloves on. But as we found out more about the CTE and stuff like this, I think it's much more serious than people realize. Gary Turner is the guy that raised it. He's been pushing it a lot. He's a former fighter himself, and he's been pushing it a lot now, saying people need to look at this. He's not saying that people shouldn't box or they shouldn't have head contact, but they should be informed. And children certainly shouldn't be doing it because they can't give informed consent, which I would definitely agree with. I recently ran an interclub competition at my gym, and we had some MMA fights. We had we had a Thai boxing fight, and we had some grappling matches. We had a couple of kids fighting, under 18s fighting. And I said straight away when the gyms came to me, if kids are fighting, there's no head contact. We're not going to do it. We're not doing head contact for kids at all, not at all. And I think it's not just fighting. I think rugby and other sports like that, football. I mean that got quite a big that got quite a big showing in the news maybe a couple of decades ago about all the headers and stuff that footballers were taking, right? And then it was
the heavy balls as well years ago.
Yeah. And it was detrimental to children, I think it's definitely true. And because it's not just the informed consent side of it, as Gary points out, it's the brain's still developing, and it's very very sensitive. So, for a number of reasons, children shouldn't be subjected to head contact.
So, do you think that they should no head contact at all until they're 18? Or do you think sort of a certain age and then they start wearing headgear, or it should just be nothing until they're 18?
Okay, so I'm not a boxer.
From there.
I've not coached purely boxing. I've not competed in purely boxing. It's not my main sport. But I've trained it a fair bit. Yes, as a lot of people will probably disagree. I did it when I was younger. Never did me no harm. Okay, fine. Okay, I'm sure it didn't, right? But the potential's there, right? Yeah, so I would say under 18, no head contact. That's simple. I'm not a massive fan of head guards, to be honest. I
No.
don't think they really do much to protect your head. I don't have any scientific studies to back that up. So maybe I'm talking nonsense. But in my experience, I get hurt more when I'm wearing a head guard because I can't see the punches. Because a lot of times it's hard to get the vision right. It's harder to see when you've got your peripheral vision tied off here.
Yeah.
In my experience, at least. I mean, maybe some people, again, other people will argue and they'll say, oh, I don't find it a problem and it works for me. Fine, okay. You crack on as long as you're not doing it with children, no problem, right? I'm not a big fan of head guards, and I'm certainly not a fan of kids taking head trauma.
The thing with CTE is you don't know how much damage, long-term damage, is done until after the person has died. So all these people who say, "Oh, it didn't do me any harm," they don't actually know until they die. And if they don't, they don't donate their brain to science when they die, it won't be checked. You know, unless they die of some sort of head trauma.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, look, Brendan Ingle, Nazim Hamed's coach, when he was younger, Brendan Ingle at his gym, they had zero head contact. You didn't do it. And when they were kids, kids did not have any head contact. It was all from the neck down. And it's undeniable that he was a good coach because he produced some fantastic boxers. You don't need to take punches in the face to get good at boxing. You know, that's been demonstrated. We know that. That's been shown. Would it make you a better boxer? Well, you might be able to argue that point, but certainly you can become world class without doing head contact, and we've seen that happen. So, I mean, the risk to reward for having children punch in the face, it's a no-brainer. I mean, excuse the pun, right? But it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I tend to agree. As a father of 3 boys who are very rough, and they all play sport and they all want to go into like doing MMA training or martial arts training. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with. So, for instance, we bought some boxing equipment last year, I think it was, just some gloves and a box pads and some other bits. And straight away, of course, they get the gloves and they start sort of not punching each other hard in the head, but like just sort of jabbing and touching, and it's what they see on TV or whatever. And I said straight away, no, you can play about and stuff, but you do not hit in the face, the head, anything, because it does only take one nasty shot as well to fall or to hit, especially at a young age with kids and that, and just messing about in the house more. I mean, with that, but it only takes one punch to do a lot of damage.
At our gym, we've been open now in Chippenham since 2006, so 13 years. And from the very first day that we did MMA, we always said contact is 10%. We do 10% contact on the feet and 1% contact on the ground. And that doesn't mean just go a bit lighter. I mean, it's touch sparring. Even for adults, even like in our adult classes, we do touch sparring. And my guys fight well. You know, when they compete, they do well. You don't need to smash me in the face full power for me to know that being punched in the face hurts. You don't need to prove that to me. I know it hurts, right? But we want to train tomorrow and we want to train the next day, and we don't want to be waking up with concussions, right? Or going to bed with concussions. Or people don't want to go to work or school the next day with broken noses and black eyes, right? You don't need to beat someone up to get better at fighting. It's about timing and accuracy. You want to work your power, go on the bag, right? If you want to really spar real hard, okay, let me know. I'll put you in with myself or one of the pro fighters, and we'll beat the shit out of you, right? And see how much you like that, right? Because you get it. You get the guys come down the gym and they want to just have it. So okay, great. Okay, that's just fresh meat for us. I'll tell you 3 times. The 3rd time, you're still trying to bang me out, right? Okay, I'm going to fill you in. Right. But yeah, we keep our power right down. And as I say, I'm the same as you. I'm cautious about my kids. I'm the same as you. I've got 3 boys. They're active. They play a lot of sports. They don't want to do MMA, thankfully. But I mean, one of my boys does competitive trampolining, and he's very good. He's only 7, and it worries me now, all this head trauma, to the point where I'm worrying how much impact his head's taken just from bouncing and doing these backhand stuff. And I think, is that playing a part in anything? Is that going to cause him any problems? So, I mean, if he wanted to get punched in the face, I'd be horrified.
Yeah. It's my older boy is a goalkeeper, and he's 14, and he's had he's had two concussions, really. He had one which was like a confirmed, and then one where I think he probably did, but he was kind of all right and stuff. And that was worrying enough, because all he did is he slid out to sort of dive on the ball, and the striker came through and his knee hit his head, and it's horrifying. Like
that happened to our assistant coach. At our gym, we've got a second coach there, and he used to play football a lot as a goalie, and he got his neck broken. Fortunately, he's recovered relatively okay. He had some pins in the. I mean, at the time, he was paralysed. He couldn't move. Down. He was terrified. He was playing football. He went to pick up the ball. Guy ran in, crunched him. He woke up in hospital, not being able to move his arms and his legs. Right. But he's gone on. He had surgery and stuff, and he's gone on to have a successful pro MMA career. So he was fortunate. Cool. But
I mean, even last year there was a boy, a 13-year-old Thai boy, who died during a kickboxing bout, and that was like literally last year, where the referee was a bit slow to stop it. 13, and I know there's a different part of the world where there's perhaps less, sanctions and stuff, but like a lot of these fighters, because like particularly like UFC and Bellator, it's a worldwide sport now, isn't it? Like they're bringing fighters in from all over the world, and if some of those fighters have been doing like Muay Thai or like kickboxing from an early age, how much trauma have they had? When their brain wasn't fully developed, and how much damage will it do? I'd like to get Gary on, actually, to speak about CTE. I want to do a show on CTE anyway.
Yeah. I mean, he recently did a podcast. Just last week, I think, he did a podcast where he spoke about this sort of stuff.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move through.
Okay.
So we had two which were similar, sort of basically the same subject, but from two different angles. So the one person said about, I think he was specifically referring to the female transsexual MMA fighter, Fallon Fox, who had been fighting women or biological women, and at first hadn't told those women that she had formerly been a male. And then the other, well, let's go with that first, and then we'll go to rather than flitting back and forth.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to make enemies no matter what I say, right?
This is exactly what I was going to say. It's like you can't really win. But one thing I will say,
that's okay. I don't care about having fans. Like, I'll give you my point of view, and I care about being honest. If you don't like it, oh well.
My thing is, I don't care if people are gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, whatever they sort of want to do and be, and great, fantastic. So I really like wrestling and MMA and boxing and all these things. I have no desire to just generally now, without even talking about transgender and stuff, I have got no desire to see a man beat the shit out of a woman in any walk of life, in any of those things, even in wrestling where it's fake. I have no desire to see it.
Isn't it strange? And I'm not criticizing you. Isn't it strange that we feel the need to preface what we're going to say by making that sort of statement? I mean, it should go without saying that we don't want to see a man beat up a woman, right? But it's now in some of these contexts, you've got to maybe kind of make that sort of statement first. You know, I know where you're coming from.
And it really bothers me. And in a minute, we're going to go into a slightly different angle of this, where from a more competitive sort of point of view, rather than the physical and the danger point of view. Now, to me, what Fallon Fox did when she didn't tell those fighters beforehand, I thought that was very dangerous, because regardless of whatever people say, generally, people who are born male, generally, not every single case, but generally, they are genetically bigger, stronger, quicker. It's just it's just a fact. And for someone to be able to go and, it's really difficult to word without, because I don't want to offend anyone, but equally, what you've got to understand is, say,
if you're uncomfortable saying it, let me say it. I mean,
and you go for it.
I mean, I can see that. I know exactly what you're trying to say, and from more than one angle. I know that you're trying not to offend anyone, but you're trying to give your opinion, and your opinion is men shouldn't beat up women, right?
Yeah,
I get that, right? So let me give my views on this transgender debate, okay? And hopefully I'm not going to sound hateful doing so, right? And hopefully I'm not going to sound too crazy left wing either, because I'm a little left wing on that sort of stance, if I'm honest. Yeah. I like to think I'm somewhat progressive, but not to the point where I'm really a lefty. So transgender, I fully support transgender rights, absolutely. And then what I'm going to say next, people might say, well, then you don't support transgender rights. I don't agree with transgender athletes who have transitioned from male to female competing against females in sport. I'll explain why. Steroids are banned for a reason. Okay, they're banned because they make a difference, right? Is it acceptable to compete on steroids? No, right? Is it acceptable to use testosterone to and then whilst you're using testosterone, is it acceptable to compete on testosterone in any sport? No, right? Unless it specifically says use what you like, right? Like maybe some bodybuilding federations. Okay, that's a given, right? Now, is it acceptable to use steroids in the off season and then come off them and then compete clean in any sport? Is that acceptable? The answer again is no. That's why you have out-season testing, right? You can't compete. You can't train off season on testosterone and then compete in season off it. That's still unacceptable. Well, isn't that what a man does when he transitions into being a woman? I mean, he's been on testosterone all his life, right? Yeah. And then come off it, right? That seems like a huge violation of doping policy, right? But let's say that in and of itself may not be a good enough answer, and they may argue, okay, but if you completely I think, and I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand it, the IOC guidelines say that you've got to have your level below your hormone levels below a certain threshold. Your testosterone could be below a certain threshold for 2 years or so, and then you can compete as a female. And we should probably be a little bit more careful in our wording, because I don't want to offend anyone, like you don't want to offend anyone. So when we say man and woman, we should really probably use the terms male and female, because there is a difference between gender and sex. A lot of people will argue, no, there isn't, right? But there is, right? A man is a gender, right? And male is a sex, I suppose. So if you're transitioning from male to female, just getting your hormone levels lower doesn't mean that you lose all your athletic advantage. If you took a 60-year-old farmer, right, his testosterone levels could be through the floor. I mean, he's an old man. His testosterone is really low. But I bet he could pick up a tractor, right? Some of these old guys are really, really, really strong. It's the last thing to go, right? Strength is the last natural attribute that you lose, right? as you get older. If you look at guys like Vitor Belfort or Dan Henderson, they're on TRT. If they weren't on TRT, their levels were low enough to qualify as being female athletes. You can't seriously consider putting them in there with you can see the physical difference.
So
Dan Henderson
just to jump in there, where you say their levels would have qualified them to be female. So say Vitor Belfort decided, I now identify as a female, and I want to transition into being a female athlete. You're telling me that it's okay for Vitor Belfort to go into a UFC cage against whatever weight woman it would be?
Against Holly Holm or someone. Well, I mean,
yeah,
right? He'd have to be head. Right? No, I'm not telling you that's okay. Right?
No, but that's the
argument.
Way the rules are written, if you like, or that's the argument. Yeah.
There's some more nuance to that, of course. As I said,
yes,
there's the 2-year period. I think they have to sign in with a doctor regularly. They've got to be monitored. I think they may have to be on estrogen therapy as well. So there's more to it, right? Of course.
My point is that it's open to abuse. You could have a male who is not a particularly great fighter, who's big and strong, but not at the top of his game, and he could go through the process and meet all the things he needs to meet in order to then fight as a transgender female.
I think. Right, and
I mean is it's open to abuse in that.
I know that you probably don't mean to be offensive, but I think.
Okay.
I think some people would probably find what you said offensive.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, and I know you don't mean to be. I don't find it offensive, but I'm not trans. But I don't think anyone is likely to go through all of that just to compete and win a sporting event. No one's gonna. I don't think anyone wants to actually transition to being female just to win a sporting event. You know, I mean, it's quite a lifestyle change.
Of course, no. I'm obviously I'm looking at it from sort of extreme example.
Neither you or myself are experts, right? So we're just shitballing here. Yeah, I get that, right? You know, and we're saying stuff that we haven't necessarily thought all the way through. We haven't got the advantage of being well read on this subject. You know, so we're kind of ignorant. I get that. So I know you're not trying to offend anyone. But I don't think abuse is probably an issue because I don't think. I mean, would you do it? Would you go through a hormone therapy?
I mean,
I wouldn't. Right?
Does the person have to have the operation? I don't know. And this is what I mean. It's just a discussion to sort of
they've got testosterone lowered, right? I think through estrogen therapy for 2 years, right? You know, there's more to it. I think that, you know, they need to change their gender on a national database or something like this, right? I mean, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, right? That would make it completely impractical for someone unless they want to actually really be transgender and transition.
So open to abuse, that would potentially sounds like that would be out of the window.
You're right. I mean, it could happen. You know, if someone was that dedicated to winning, I guess they could. But it's I think that's.
I'm fine with being corrected. Absolutely. Like.
Well, I mean,
as I say,
I'm correct.
Trying to discuss it.
Yeah. But what I will say is that and I'm going to sound a little bit daft because I can't remember names. But there was that New Zealand weightlifter who comes up all the time and had probably been debunked by someone, I suppose. But there was that guy, that weightlifter from New Zealand, and I think he was all right. He was all right as a weightlifter. I think he was. I mean, competitively, he was relatively average. I think he placed on a national level. He transitioned to female, and as a female, she broke world records, like comfortably. I mean, you know, that tells me one thing. Okay, and it's a sample size of one, so what is that? You know, is that statistically relevant? Maybe not. Okay, Fallon Fox had no real background in combat sports, transitioned to being female, started brutally knocking people out, right? Repeatedly, over and over and over and over and over, right? Every fight, she's boot in the head, someone's going unconscious. I mean, okay, I get, you know,
it's dangerous as hell as well, isn't it?
You've done what has been asked of you, right? Because the IOC or the Athletic Commission, They've made the requirements. You have to meet these requirements to compete as a female. Okay, and they've done it. So I can't blame them, right? They want to be female. They feel female, and they want to be female. I mean, or the other way around. They're female and they want to become male, right? But these are biological males who feel female and they want to be female. Okay, I feel for you. That's and why shouldn't you, right? If that's what you want to do, absolutely support you. I'll use your proper pronouns. I've got no issue with your lifestyle. What you do is what you do. And you want to compete in a sport. I get that, but you shouldn't. If you want to compete, you should be competing against biological males, in my opinion. And I don't mean to sound restrictive. It sounds like I'm not being inclusive there. Well, okay, I wouldn't let a blind person be a race car driver either. I'm not trying to be uninclusive. You've got to be sensible at some point. When it's clearly an advantage, when you've got a male transitioning to female and then suddenly setting world records or suddenly knocking women out, you've got to say, well, hang on a minute, right? I mean,
so okay, let's bring in. So I'll bring in the second part of the two questions, or the subjects was centered. So the other bit in was about some of the things which Sharon Davis, the swimmer, has been saying recently about males transitioning to females and then competing in the Olympics or in swimming, and she's very much against it for all the reasons that we've just discussed. But equally, she has actually been affected by someone using testosterone and steroids. She actually lost a medal in 1980 to the East German athletes who had been using cycling and testosterone and steroids. And she actually lost a gold medal, which she had worked all her life to get to. And these athletes, for instance, in the Olympics, just like fighters, they train every day from a young age.
Yep.
They put their life and soul in it, and then you could potentially lose out if it's just. So she lost out to the East German. I've written East German athletes because I couldn't pronounce the names, but there was a group of them from that period who were proven to have used testosterone and steroids.
It was
were then found out. And I think I might be wrong, but I think she, in hindsight, has now been awarded. The people were, and they've been awarded the medal since or whatnot. But that's not the same, because it's not the same as sitting, going up on the podium and having your national anthem played and getting your medal, because that's like the pinnacle. That's what you've worked for.
Yeah. Now, if you could take a male and transition them to be female biologically, if that was scientifically possible, then I'd have no issue with it. Why would I? What could my argument be, right? Other than that they've trained as a male all their life until that point, I suppose, which may be an advantage. But if you could transition physically to being, XY chromosome, all that sort of stuff, fine. But I don't believe you can. And who am I to argue scientists, right? Yeah, I get that, right? If they've got doctors on board and they say that it's fine, okay. But the data kind of seems to me like it isn't, right? I don't think hormone levels are good enough. It's not just about hormone levels.
No,
there's more to being male than just your T count, biologically at least, right? What you identify as, your business, none of mine.
Yeah, and I'm the same. Like I said at the start, I'm not even particularly interested in how other people live their lives and what they want to sort of identify in and who they want to be in relationships with. It doesn't really bother me one way or the other.
I'm a huge believer in freedom. I'm pretty libertarian, not completely, because I do believe in getting into politics. I believe in some social policies are important and useful, but on a personal level, I'm pretty libertarian, and I believe in freedom to live your life how you want. You want to have your religion, fine. You want to have your sexuality, fine. All that sort of stuff. But I also believe in being free of it. right? If I don't want to be involved in your religion, I don't have to be. If I don't want to be involved in your sexuality, I don't have to be. And if I don't want to be affected by your transitioning, then I shouldn't have to be. If a woman's fighting, she should be free. If you want to transition, fine. But female athletes should also be free from having to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Yeah, not even pretty much. I agree with everything that you just said, and you worded it a lot better. I was getting a bit sort of stumbling.
Yeah, I don't seem like I'm calling you out on stuff, right?
No.
You know,
Because
I'm just trying to be sensitive about it. That's all. You know, and I'm sure we have. I'm sure we'd be. You know,
that's what I was trying to do.
I do have one or two trans friends, right? You know, so I see it a little bit, and I don't talk to them about it too much, you know, because it's not really any of my business, you know. But a little bit I do, you know, and I try and be inclusive, you know, try and see things from their point of view, because it's obviously a very difficult position to be coming from, you know. So I'm not an expert.
Interesting. Going back to Sharon Davis, the interesting thing I've seen is sometimes when I read Sharon Davis's tweets and I'll read the replies, it's quite often I see transgender people in the replies saying, I agree with Sharon Davis. So it's not a case of like, you know, as is with any sort of group of people or people, male, female, whatever. It's not everyone agrees and not everyone thinks the same thing. And to a certain extent, I admire Sharon Davis because there's no upside to her voicing her opinion. She talks about it at length, you know, on a weekly basis, and on the whole, generally just gets abuse for it. You know, she could just be quiet and not say anything, but she believes strongly in it. And I think she should have, you know, she just as the people who are calling her transphobic or hateful or whatever it may be are saying to her, just as they have the right to say if they feel that she's been offensive or that she's saying something which they're not entirely comfortable with, she should be able to voice her opinion without being told that she's, you know, if she's not being transphobic and she's just trying to have a difficult conversation and trying to do it as respectfully as possible, then, you know, let's have.
Now we're coming to an interesting topic, aren't we? Freedom of speech.
Yeah, having conversations which are difficult.
Do we have freedom of speech in this country? Not really.
I don't think so.
And should we? I think yes.
Oh, yeah, we should. We should be able to discuss anything.
Should we be able to air opinions that are offensive?
See, I was always brought up to be.
How much can I squirm?
No, I'm all right. This sort of part of it, I'm not so bad because I was always brought up that I'm entitled to have my opinion and I can say what I think. You cannot tell people what to think. You cannot tell people how they feel, but you can have your opinion. If it offends people, then you've got to own it because that's your opinion. You don't have to do it in a nasty way and you don't have to be horrible about it. Not everyone is going to agree with everyone over every single thing. I quite enjoy comedy, which is quite sort of dark and some would probably consider offensive these days. But
me too.
Don't begrudge people who find it offensive or don't want to watch it. But I do believe that I have the right to enjoy it and watch it. And it does frustrate me sometimes.
But you don't in this country, do you? You don't have the right. You don't have the right in this country to enjoy it.
No, we don't feel like that at the moment.
Well, it's true. We don't have freedom. I mean, there's laws against. I mean, throughout Europe, there's laws against certain types of speech, right? I mean, there's things you can't say. You're not public. You can't Like people get arrested on Twitter for making hateful comments, right? You know, they make comments on Twitter that are hateful towards different demographics, and then they got the police knocking on their door, right?
So here's an interesting one for you. Today, I saw a video come up on, you know, like in Facebook where you have the video feeds, and if you watch one video, they all just come up, just loads of different videos. So there was a video of a pride parade. I think it was in up London way. I forget the area. I think it was up London way. So they were doing a pride parade, and as they walked past, a lady in a full burqa was shouting abuse at them, shouting shame and this and that, you know, not being very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you think if I was in London and I said that to the people in the Pride March,
yeah,
if I said what she was saying, I would probably have been arrested, or at least removed from the area forcefully.
That's a tangent, isn't it? That's whether the police are enforcing the law equally.
Yeah, but I don't just mean with the lady with the burqa. I just mean generally, if it was a black guy and a white guy, I feel like the white guy is more likely to be told that he's being hateful, but the black guy is more likely to be face down in handcuffs by the police. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's very much like...
I do know what you mean. And I've seen the same thing in the media. But as we've discussed earlier, how much of the media can we trust, right? So, I mean, like, they've got agendas, right? Like, if I see in the Daily Mail all the time that Muslims are screaming that we should all burn in hell, right? How true is that? Yeah, of course, some are, but I mean, I know lots of Muslims, and I've never heard that from any of them, right? So, I mean, you can cherry pick, of course, right? Which is what a lot of the media do, especially when they're looking to sell papers, right? So, now, I think it's been acknowledged by the police, some police forces. I think they have acknowledged this, that they've been more lax with Muslim communities and other sort of minority communities because they didn't want to appear racist, which is obviously wrong, right? You can't do that. You should treat everyone equally. I don't know how prevalent that is because I can only go by what I see in the media, and that doesn't give me any numbers or statistics. That just gives me sensationalist headlines. So
yeah,
I don't know how. I mean, like, I would like to think that the law would be applied equally by most police forces, but maybe it isn't. But I don't know how to quantify that.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult because the media. I have done podcasts with Reese about the media and just the lack of factual information that you get in stories.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, and
stories, and it's always a source or a friend.
I mean, their grammar's terrible as well. I wonder, you know, these writers. I mean, what are they doing? Where are they finding them? Where are they dragging them out of? I mean, it's awful.
Yeah, it is. It's terrible.
You know, I won't take any media opinion at all anymore. I will only go to decent media sites or papers or whatever and look at the facts and the numbers and then draw my own conclusions. Right? I mean, I'm not going to take their opinions on anything because they're always biased, all of them. I mean, even the ones that you think are going to be like pretty straight, like the Guardian, but no, that's left wing. Or the Telegraph, which is the Tory graph, right? Or the Independent. Well, they're independent from all of them, right? Well, no, they're not. When you read their stuff, it's nonsense, right? You know, so
yeah, the BBC has become terrible. And like when I was younger, the BBC would have been a TV channel and a media outlet that I would have believed everything they say.
Yeah.
And even they've got this like whole slant. Like I consider myself quite centrist. I sort of kind of pick and choose from everywhere of what I kind of believe in and what I get on with. And every newspaper or media outlet is either all the way over to one side or all the way over to the other side. It's not, and to me, journalists should be reporting facts. It shouldn't be a slant on.
We're on the same page.
This or that. It should be, this is what happened.
Not projecting their opinions. Not trying to sell their papers. The papers should sell themselves on the merit that they're posting the factual news. Yeah. But they don't.
I miss the days where journalists would they would research stories, and then they would it was like a long form researched over a few months, and then they would expose something, or it would be this, but it would all be based in facts, because that's what a journalist would do, is supposed to get to the truth. And they do not feel like they do that anymore.
It's terrible, and you have to read media sources with a skeptical view, and look. You have to know how to read them. Look at the facts. Look at the numbers that they're presenting. If they're not presenting those things, if they're not giving you hard data, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And even then, you need to double check that data.
Oh, always double check. Okay, last couple of subjects. So before we go to the subject, there's 2 questions which got sent in. So I'm assuming they'll be a bit sort of shorter answers than the subject. So someone on Twitter asked, tell us about the bird incident and the time you got clubbed by a tire iron.
What's the bird incident? I don't know. But I got hit with a tire iron. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Some guy, when I was a teenager, some guy said I heard he was going to, people telling me, this guy's going to beat you up. Well, he's welcome to try. And I saw him one night in a park, and it kicked off, and he went to punch me, and I just covered it up easy. I thought, a slow punch. And, wow, that really hurt. He punches really hard. I've got to take him out quick. And I saw he had a tire iron in his hand, and blood pouring down my head.
Could have done some damage. That could have, couldn't it?
Yeah, I've got a scar. Yeah, 4 stitches. So I took off, and I went, and I got. It's terrible for me to say. I got a samurai sword, and went and found him and chased him down with it. Yeah, I didn't get him though.
But, do you know what? It's really ironic that you've just talked about that, because the next subject is knife crime. There you've just said about that.
Okay.
Obviously,
What's the question?
So knife crime is I find it a really depressing subject, because I feel like about a year ago, or maybe a bit longer, it was like this sort of thing where you'd hear about kids in London, particularly, but in the UK, and it was like gangs. It seemed to be, but recently, it seems to have been like young women, couples, younger kids. Even a pregnant woman the other day was stabbed. But it is literally every day. Like when I go out, I'll have a cup of coffee and I'll go and sit in my garden, and I'll just sort of scan through all the different sort of newspapers, news sites.
You're right. It sounds terrible, right?
Stabbing.
Well, we're a nation of 60 million people, right? One person getting stabbed. I mean, and I know it's happening every day. Okay, but look, one person getting stabbed statistically is irrelevant, right? Out of 60 million, right?
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's more than one. Maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 20. Maybe it's 1,000, right? But we aren't given that data, right? So it's all we're done is given these headlines, and it sounds terrible, and it's factual. It's happened. A woman's been stabbed. That is terrible. But if that is the only stabbing out of 60 million people, well, it sounds really bad, and of course I wish he hadn't been, but it's still a very low number. Now, maybe the number's a lot higher, maybe it's a lot lower, I don't know. But without that data, it's hard to form an opinion. Like, stabbings are going up, are they? Or are stabbing reportings going up? Now, I mean, stabbing probably are going up, right? I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah, I think particularly in London, I think the knife crime figures have tripled in the last 2 years or something.
And that's what That's what you want to look for. You want to look for those figures, right? That tells you more of a story. So right, okay. So knife attacks have tripled. That's terrible. So what's causing it? And we need to address that and look at it and why it's happening. How can we prevent it? Do you think that banning knives, for example, would reduce that?
I think but I don't think banning knives does, because I think making stuff illegal doesn't necessarily correlate to people stopping using it or doing it.
Agreed.
I think stronger sentences for carrying a knife is more likely to, not for using it, for carrying it, is like, if these kids know that if they carry a knife, they'll be in jail for whatever, 3 years just for carrying it. And if they use it, they're in years, in prison for 20 years. Just plucking figures out of my head.
Okay. So my thoughts on that, and I kind of segued this a little bit, because I have some relatively strong beliefs on gun rights.
Yeah.
I don't think that we should have had the handgun ban, for example.
Yeah.
And I don't know if banning people from carrying knives is the answer either. And I'll tell you why. I think there are legitimate reasons for wanting to carry a knife. And I kind of think self-defense is one of those legitimate reasons. Should you carry a knife to defend yourself? Well, I think it's, I should probably qualify that. I think that sounds pretty horrendous and pretty thuggish, that you're carrying a knife around in anticipating someone attacking you so you can stab them up. Obviously, that sounds terrible. Okay, but I don't think carrying a knife by itself should be illegal. I think stabbing someone is already illegal, and that should be illegal. But what if you're going fishing, right? Should you have a knife with you? Well, yeah, right.
Camping.
Right, is that illegal? And you can argue, well, no, if you can argue it legitimately, then you'd be okay. If you stand up in a court and you can argue your point, well, why should I have to do that? Right? As I said, I'm a believer in freedom. Now, if I stab someone, well, of course I should have to answer questions, right, and face justice. But I don't think that if you haven't physically hurt anyone, and if you're not planning to hurt anyone, then I don't think any crime has been committed, and I think it shouldn't be illegal. And I don't think it would stop. I don't think it would reduce crime, because criminals don't care. I mean, by definition, they break the law. Now, if you think about stabbing someone could kill them, right? What's an adequate sentence, or not adequate? Sorry, let's say what's a typical sentence for stabbing someone? I don't know, but let's say you stab someone.
Much, I don't think.
Sorry.
Not very much. I don't think. I think you'd be surprised how low the average sentence is.
What, for actually stabbing someone?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I know. Okay. Let's.
Do you mean okay? Would you say if you stab someone, does that automatically, assuming it's not self-defense and it's you've stabbed someone, would you say that is attempted murder by definition?
Depends on. I think there's more to it than just stabbing them. Depends where if you stab them in the stomach or the chest, yeah, that's attempted murder probably, or in the neck. If you stab them in the hand, maybe not. Right? Yeah, I think there's some details.
What if you stab them in the hand because they moved their hands to block?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my point is putting a knife into someone is necessarily attempted murder. Right.
The point I was getting at is it's very difficult. There's so many intricacies to it and nuances to it. It's so difficult to say.
But
if this happens, let's get this many years, and if this happens,
right,
this is what happens. Because.
Okay. But let's pluck out a number. You stab someone in the stomach. That's pretty serious, right? What do they get? 8 years? I don't know. Let's say let's use 10 years as a round number. Okay, because this is just a thought experiment that I'm going to put to you. So the number's largely irrelevant. But let's say it's a sentence that you're not going to like, right? Like 10 years. Then you say, and for carrying a knife, you get 3 years or whatever, right? Just for carrying it, right? Do you think if someone who intends to stab someone, he goes, right, I'm going to go stab that person. I don't like them. They've annoyed me. I'm going to go stab them up. I hate that guy. And I'm going to stab him, and I'm risking 10 years. Oh no, hang on a minute. I might get 3 years for possession.
Yeah.
He's not going to. Right? He's already. If he's going to stab someone, he's acknowledged he's already a high risk of getting a high sentence. The addition of giving him an additional sentence for carrying the knife, all that does is criminalize carrying a knife, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem.
No, but what it does do,
a problem.
what it could do is it could stop like a young teenager from carrying a knife in the first place. So there's two ways to look at it. Could stop a young teenager from carrying a knife because they're thinking about their safety or self-defense. So if they get stopped, they don't get that 3-year sentence because they were put off from carrying it. But what it could also do is mean that if they do get attacked or something, they don't have it to defend themselves, which I'm sure a lot of these cases of, knife crime is, people defending themselves against each other. And,
I don't think there's an issue with either of those scenarios. I think someone carrying to defend themselves, me personally, I think it's okay. As long as they use it properly. And I think the only issue is going out stabbing someone, right?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, no one would need to carry one, would they?
Right.
So,
and that's that's an important point, and that's something to address because, and it's going to lead heavily into politics. Why are these kids going out stabbing people? Right? I mean, why is it happening? Why are they going out and doing this? Is it because our economy is turning to shit? Right? Is it because they've got less going on for them? There's less opportunity for them. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm sure the government would tell you that it's it's the TV shows and it's the music and it's the video games that they play, but it's nothing to do with the quality of schooling going downhill and the areas becoming rougher because the council tax is sky high, but the council actually do very little to make these areas safer or what.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's
we've had 10 years of austerity, right, or whatever, 8 years of austerity, and in that same time, knife crime seems to have gone up. Well, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? But
I just think, like I always say, if we had the same laws on guns here as they do in most states in America, I would have a gun. I would have a gun locked in a safe in my house so that for self-defense, whatever you want to call it, protection of my family. I would. Now, there's two sort of aspects to that. There's one, just that I would, regardless of anything else, just for my own peace of mind, knowing that it's there. But also, I'd know that there would be a lot more guns out on the street and people would have more guns because they would be legal. So there would be more people with guns.
Right, but guns are legal here. It was only 97 that they banned pistols. Before that, I guess you didn't have a gun, but they were legal, right? I mean, and now you can carry a shotgun. Well, you can't carry a shotgun. You can own a shotgun. I mean, you've got to pass your exams and everything else, right? You've got to get a license and all that, right? And a criminal can get hold of a handgun here.
Yeah, okay.
Right? But I'm guessing you don't have a gun in a safe, right? And if you did, you wouldn't tell me because it'd be illegal. You wouldn't admit it.
No, but no, I don't have a safe either.
Of course you haven't, right? No. Neither have I. But criminals do have guns here.
Yeah.
But you don't feel the need to buy a gun to protect yourself, right?
Strange, isn't it? Because it's like it's almost like this false sense of security in that the gun crime in the UK isn't reported that much. You don't see that much of it.
Well, it's quite low.
Newspapers, so you don't consider it to be as big a threat or as issue as you would if you lived in America.
Well,
but
our
London has got the highest rate of homicide.
Sorry?
I said, but London have got the highest rate of homicide in the Western world. I can't remember if it's the last year or the last 2 years. They've got the highest rate of, murder anywhere, higher than America.
I'd have to see those stats to believe that, if I'm honest. I don't know if I believe that.
See if I can pull them up now.
I think there was 1 month or something where the crime rate or the murder rate in London overtook New York for 1 or 2 months.
It might have been, I might have been generalising New York to
I think
the whole of America.
Compared to Chicago or Detroit or somewhere like that, I don't think London come close.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, parts of the US are real shitholes, real third world shitholes. They only gave black civil rights 50 years ago, right? I mean, they've really shit on their people. They've got some real desperate areas over there.
Yeah, I guess there's some areas which is literally still like the Wild West.
People have no hope at all, right? People have they've got no future over there, a lot of areas, right? So their murder rate is 4 times ours.
Right, that's where I got confused. So London's murder rate now tops New York City's, which, considering the ease of access to guns in America, you would expect, or at least I would expect, I suppose, that New York would have a higher rate of.
Well, New York's got quite strict gun laws. Well, sorry, New Jersey at least. And I don't actually know New York's gun laws very well. But I think it's relatively strict compared to other parts of the US. Like Vermont's got quite quite lax gun laws. But moving away from that, moving back to your point you just said, I don't think access to a gun is really that relevant to murder rate. I don't think, and I think that's demonstrably true.
If guns are easier to get, then there's more likely to be a higher rate of. Well, then saying that, I think if people in Britain had easier access to guns, I think the crime rate would actually go down because people would be able to defend themselves who perhaps can't currently.
Well, I mean, there's that.
I've got no facts to base that on. Well, I'm just saying.
I do.
My guess is
there's
that I think it will probably come down.
There's a famous graph that shows that 1997 gun ban came in, gun homicide went up after that. You know what I mean? And then it came down again, right? But criminals don't care about the law.
No, of course, no.
Right? So, I'm going to shoot someone, right? Well, that's illegal. Yeah, okay. Right, but now it's illegal to own a gun. I don't give a shit. I'm going to shoot someone. I've already accepted I'm going to commit a crime, right?
You're already accepting that you're going to kill someone. Doesn't really matter whether the gun's legal or not.
Right. So, I mean, it's like you said earlier. If you criminalize something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stop happening, right? I mean, if criminalizing things, if that worked, then we wouldn't have a drug problem. There'd be no illegal drugs at all, right? Well, of course there are, though, right? How's that work, right? So you criminalize something, it doesn't make it go away. It just makes it illegal, right? And in some cases, you have to, right? Killing people should be illegal, right? Shooting and stabbing people should be illegal, right? But if you say owning a gun is illegal, I don't think that's going to reduce homicide. Well, it didn't in our country, right?
No.
And if you cross compare countries, which isn't, I was going to say it's not useful. It is, but for a different reason. If you cross compare countries, and people will often say America's got the most number of guns in the world, but their murder rate's higher than ours. Okay, correlation doesn't equal causation, but if you want to make that argument, what countries have the highest murder rates in the world? Well, Colombia has got a pretty high murder rate. Mexico's is pretty bad. Parts of Brazil, a lot of parts of South America, a lot of parts of Africa have very high murder rates. They haven't got any guns, or very few guns, way less guns than America, way less than most of Europe. If you look at the top 10 countries by gun ownership, it's the US, it's Switzerland, I think, number 2. I think number 3 is Yemen, and then a load of Europe comes up. I think France is quite high, Germany's quite high. It's not Belize, it's not Argentina.
Yeah.
But they've got the high murder rates, right? So, whilst there might be no correlation there between gun ownership and murder rate, if you look at it, if you want to compare countries, what people will then argue is, yeah, but we're talking first world countries. You can't compare those places because they're not well developed. Well, exactly. Countries that are less developed have higher crime rates and higher murder rates. And if you look at the Human Development Index, it has 3 main factors. I'm going on the right speech here for you.
Sorry.
But for a developed country, there's 3 main factors. It's the strength of your economy, so it's wealth. It's your average longevity, and it's your education level. Those 3 factors are what are used to determine the development index of a country. Now, the US scores quite high in all of those on average. On average, it's got a lot of wealth. On average, education is quite high. On average, their longevity is not great, but it's not too bad. But if you look at the spread of figures, it's a lot. It tells a different story. You've got pockets of the US that have very low levels of education, very low levels of wealth, and very low levels of longevity because they don't have access to a national healthcare system. They don't have access to subsidized higher education, right? And of course, their welfare programs are notoriously, strict. So whilst on average, if you look at averages, it might mask a problem. You have a lot of people that actually would score quite low on the Human Development Index, and conversely, you get higher rates of crime, right? I mean, as I said earlier, if you take a large demographic, of your population, and you deny them civil rights for, and until the last 50 years, you're going to cause some social problems, right? I'm not saying it's all black people because it's not. I'm not saying it's only black people because it's not. If you look at white Americans, they have, in isolation, they have higher murder rates than the rest of than Europe, for example, because their society, in my opinion, is flawed. They don't have access to the higher education necessarily as easily. They don't have access to healthcare as easily. A lot of them do. Some of them don't, and that makes people desperate. And conversely, you get societal problems. It's not access to guns. It's not access to guns, does it? It's a much deeper problem. It's the fact that you treat your people like shit, right?
Well, that's
that has correlation. If you look at all the countries around the world, if you correlate, as I said, if you correlate gun ownership with murder rate, they don't. The top 10 countries by gun ownership do not correlate anywhere near the top 10 countries by murder rate.
Yeah.
But the top countries by development and the top countries by murder rate, that's much closer in correlation. So I mean, it's not about.
I think if you treat people like shit, it's gonna always have a direct impact on crime rates.
If people don't have opportunity, they get desperate. It's that simple.
They find other ways to try and feed their families, make money, feed their habits, whatever it may be.
Yep.
So just finishing off on knife crime before we move on to our last subject quickly, and then I'll leave you go as we're getting a bit late now.
Well, I'm all right, but if you need to get away, no problem.
Yeah, no. Well, we got one left. So well, it's technically 2 because we didn't get into Boris and Donald Trump. But
we can if you want to.
Okay, I'll see how I feel now.
Okay.
So, just finishing off on knife crime. What would you, if you were in charge, what would you do tomorrow to try and improve the situation
of knife crime?
Yeah.
Okay. So, let me have okay, I guess I'm on the spot.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Well, it is if I hadn't had a chance to think about it. But my reflex response would be to cut back on austerity. It won't have an immediate effect, right? I don't think there's anything we can do to have an immediate effect other than something totalitarian or something completely unrealistic. I suppose you could send armies of police through the streets to stop and search everyone, but it's not right. It's not practical. So I would try to make people less desperate. Try to improve social spending, and when I say improve, I don't mean just spend more money on people, because you can't just throw money at problems, right? But I think address it properly. I think create opportunity for people, which the Tories have been terrible at. Not that I'm a Labour supporter or anything like that, because I'm not. But I think the current Tory administration, the current Tory party have been really, really bad for it.
Yeah.
For the austerity, it's just been terrible.
Oh yeah.
I would change that, try and make it less desperate.
Yeah, and it's difficult, isn't it? It's what do you do? It's not a quick fix. I think is the main thing that people need to accept.
You need to improve society. I mean, if you look at, where do you get low murder rates? Well, in the best societies in the world. Well, I mean, I guess by definition, almost, right? But so you improve society. You can't stop people you can't stop a criminal. If someone wants to kill someone, they're going to do it, right? You could ban you could ban guns, you could ban knives, you could ban everything, right? I mean, you can go on eBay tomorrow and buy a recurve bow, right? You can go into B&Q and buy a hatchet. If you want to kill someone, you will kill them, right? I've got it's a bit of a cliche. I've got a 1-ton lump of metal on my driveway capable of 120 miles an hour. I can kill someone if I want to kill them. I just don't want to kill anyone, right? I've got no reason to, and the society I live in is pretty good, and I've got a lot to lose. So I'm not a desperate person. I've got a nice family. I've got a nice job. I like my life. I don't want to spend the rest of it behind bars, right? So I'm not gonna go and kill anyone. I don't hate anyone enough to want to go and kill them. And I think that is the aim. Give people a reason to not want to do it in the first place. So that's where I would go with it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, lastly, we've got subject paedophile hunter groups.
Okay. Well, just as a subject for me to discuss.
Just as a subject for us to discuss. So, what I would say with this is, number one, as a father...
I'm going to make even less friends here, I guess, but okay.
Yeah. As a father, I couldn't do what they do because I don't think, like when they do the sting part of the sort of what they do and they film it and whatever, and then they wait for the police to come. I don't think I'd be able to sort of control myself in that situation because I feel like I would be thinking of my own kids. Particularly, there was one recently on one of the groups, which is sort of kind of local to where I am, and they went and did a sort of sting on this guy who lives probably like 25 minutes up the road from where I live, and that was a bit close to home for me. And I was like, I admire what the work they do, or at least the ones that do it properly. I'm sure there's a few cowboys out there, in that they're trying to do it but don't do it correctly. There's a few out there who do it correctly. They follow the law. They they converse with the police, and they work in side by side with the police. And the police don't have the funding to do what these groups are doing, but equally they kind of they're doing a good thing, if that makes sense to me. But like the police, going back to knife crime, I think a huge problem with knife crime, particularly in London, but everywhere in the UK, is the amount of cuts that have been made to the police force. Yeah. It's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and I think probably something that I should have said. Yeah, I mean, the austerity has also affected, as you absolutely said. You're absolutely correct. It's affected the number of police, and that's got to have had an effect. It must have done. I mean, if there's less risk of you being investigated, I mean, then there's more chance, that people are going to be criminals. If they think they get away with it, it's, I think that's going to be part of it. Right. So paedophile groups, paedophile hunter groups.
Yeah.
Right. What's my thoughts? Right. Okay. So the easy answer to win me lots of fans or to keep everyone happy is for me to say, yeah, love it. I hate paedophiles. Yeah, hang them all. Right. I mean, but that's not really necessarily how I feel. And I'll explain why. Hear me out when I say, because some stuff I'm going to say might sound a little bit mental, and because I understand that, right? I do think paedophiles should have rights. What? That's insane, right? Okay, let me tell you what I mean by that. There's a difference between a paedophile and a child predator. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. A paedophile, by definition, is someone that's attracted to children. Okay, and attraction is not a choice. You, for example, you've got kids, so you're heterosexual. I'm guessing. I don't want to make any assumptions, right? You couldn't choose to be attracted to another man, right? That's not a choice.
Yeah.
Right. It's not for me, and I'm not saying that. I've got no judgments, right? I couldn't choose to be attracted to a man. I don't find men attractive, right? Nothing wrong if you do. Not a judgment. I can't help it. I can't help that I'm attracted to women, right? Some people are attracted to children, and they can't help that. And I think a lot of them probably would wish they weren't, right? So I want to clarify something, that just being attracted to children shouldn't be a reason to vilify someone, right? They shouldn't be ostracized just because of their attraction, because they can't help who they're attracted to. Now, that said, if you act on it, right, that makes you a child predator, and absolutely, I've got no sympathy at all. Like, I'm attracted to women. It doesn't mean I have to go rape them, right? Just because you're attracted to children doesn't mean you have to go and rape them, right? So, whilst I think that paedophiles, by definition, simply those people that are attracted to children, they should have some rights, okay? They shouldn't have their houses burned down, or they shouldn't be beaten in the streets if they've done nothing wrong, okay? But the people that act on it, the ones that download the pictures, that go on these chat rooms and try and pick up 13-year-old kids, that's disgusting, absolutely disgusting, right? And they should absolutely face justice, and probably stricter justice than they get, if I'm honest. I think that the sentencing is a bit light, and they should face some stiff penalties. So I've got no sympathy at all for a child predator. And these groups, as long as they're working within the law, I've got zero issue with it, and I commend them, as long as they're doing it properly and within the law. If they take it outside the law, then I have an issue with it. Not because I have any sympathy at all, because some guy wanted to nonce a kid and a load of blokes beat the shit out of him. Who cares? Good, fuck him, right? But if they're doing it outside the law, then there's always a risk that they've beaten up an innocent guy and they got it wrong and they got their data wrong and they messed up, and they just vigilanted an innocent guy, right? That's where I would have an issue, right? If it's genuinely guys that are preying on kids, I don't give a shit what happens to them. Well, I mean, other than I want them to face justice, and if they get the shit beaten out of them along the way, right? oh well. But one, if they've done nothing wrong, they shouldn't be attacked. And two, if you are going to attack someone, can you guarantee it's the right person? Can you guarantee they've done what you think they've done? If you work with the police, then that's great. And if you can save the police the resources, I think that's amazing. Does that kind of give my view?
Yeah, I think I get what you mean. So do you think, or because I see sometimes when I don't watch them all the time, but sometimes I watch like the videos of these groups picking up people on YouTube and stuff, and I have a look in the comments, and sometimes you'll get people saying, "Oh, well, he never would have acted on it if the decoy hadn't have messaged him."
Nah.
And I'm not having that because
he would. I mean, because like people try and claim that's entrapment, right? But
bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a predator, right? I mean, if a 13-year-old kid chats you up, you say no, right? You say, whoa, yeah. You don't go, well, let's meet up. No, right? No sympathy there at all, right?
And also, if you take it back to what you said about like not being able to help who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Okay. So say like with anyone, if they're in a relationship and they're attracted to women, say, if another woman contacts them and says, "Oh, hi, blah, 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 let's meet up," you have the choice to say, "No, I'm married," or, yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Yep.
And if that person then say, when it comes to the, when they say, "Oh, they're 13 or whatever," it's like, well, no, that's where there's a difference, because I've seen some people saying, "Oh, they wouldn't have acted on it if you hadn't messaged them," and I say, no, I do think that's bullshit, because if they weren't going to act on it, they wouldn't have acted on it. They would have said, "No, thanks."
The fact that they've tried to is that's too bad, right? That they've done it now, right? Yep, no, guilty. Do them in, right? Well, I mean, no, have them face justice, rather, right? But yeah, if they acted on it, right? I mean, whether it's decoy or not, if a decoy contacts me and says, like, "Oh, do you want to meet up? I'm 13 years old." No, I don't. I mean, it's relatively simple, right? If you say yes and you try and meet up with them, well, you should face justice. It might not have been a real 13-year-old, and maybe you can argue that you wouldn't have acted on it, but too bad, you did, right? So that's the end of that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is as well, it's like to me, if like a 13-year-old messaged me, I don't think I'd respond.
Yeah.
Because I would just be like, no, that's just not appropriate, like, at all.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like even just for me to reply and say, whatever, like, no thanks, or, I'm too old for you, or you're too young, whatever. I just wouldn't want to get into any interaction whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I've got no sympathy for the people who claim that it's entrapment, or it's, people.
Yeah, I mean, like, you see,
have acted on it.
I mean, you see that show, with Chris Hansen,
Yeah.
And I don't feel sorry for the guys, but it's almost always these guys come in and they were just lonely guys and they couldn't make friends, and a 13-year-old was talking to them, and so they got friendly and got chatting, and they liked the attention, so they started chatting. Right, okay. Now, I'm not saying I agree. I can understand where you're coming from. I can understand you're a lonely guy, right, and you've got someone talking to you, but they're a 13-year-old child. You don't agree to go around there and fuck them, right?
Yeah, and they go into the fucking house as well.
Yes.
Like, they're not just like messaging them. They go to the fucking house.
Yeah.
Mental.
I mean, at that stage, you've waived any sort of right to claim that you were set up, right? I mean, no, you're a predator.
Yes. Yeah. Deserve what you get.
Yeah, that's my thought. But as I said, just to reiterate, I think that being attracted to children is something that people do suffer from, legitimately, without wanting to act on it. and they should probably receive some sort of support, I think. And additionally, and I again want to reiterate, as long as these groups are working within the law, then I think, yeah, crack on.
Indeed. So, just before I closed off, I just as I was like about an hour before we started, I came across this thing on Facebook. So it's this is basically someone's put up these photographs of text messages, and it's this woman, and she says, "Hey Jenny, it's so and so's wife. We met at so and so's christening." And she says, "Oh yeah, hi, I remember. How's you and your family?" "Oh, good." And she says, "Good, fine, thanks. I'm pregnant again. That's why I'm messaging you." And she says, "Oh wow, blah blah blah, congratulations." And then she says, "Oh, the reason I'm messaging you is because your dog is called, I forget what the name was now. I'm trying to be. Your dog's called Tilly, but we want to call our baby Tilly. So can you change the dog's name?"
Yeah, I
She
saw
says
this
no,
one.
and it's just like. So
Yeah.
I wanted to finish on something fun and like a bit more comical. Would you change your pet's name if someone asked you so they could name their baby that?
Well, okay, right. You know, I saw this come up because I got tagged in it. Well, no, I mean the short answer. But again, I think it's down to a thing about freedom, right? You know, I saw the screenshots, and this woman went absolutely mental that she refused to change her dog's name.
She probably went.
Yeah. She wanted to call her newborn daughter Tilly, and she said, you know, but your dog's called Tilly, and I can't have my daughter having the same name as your dog. So can you change your dog's name, right? And she went, well, no, and then she lost her mind. But they didn't even know each other, right? I don't think.
No, it was like acquaintances, weren't they?
Yeah. But even if I did know, even if one of my close friends, like I've got a cat called Aries, so you're not going to call your kid Aries, I suppose. But let's say I had a cat called, or a dog called Ben. When I was a kid, I had a dog called Ben, so let's go with that. And someone says to me, right, I want to call my kid Ben. A friend of mine, if he said it to me, well, okay, call your dog Ben. As I said, I believe in freedom, right? You can call your dog Ben, and I can you can call your kid Ben. I can call my dog Ben, right? And they go, no, but I don't want to do that. Well, then don't do it. Yeah, but I want you to do it. Well, you can't force me because I believe in freedom, right? And you can't force me to do anything, and I'm not changing my dog's name, right? You know. Well, I mean, it's up to you.
Harder, isn't it?
If you want to, fine. If you don't want to, fine. But if you're going to get upset over it, well, you've got to respect that people have the freedom to call their pets what they like, right? You know.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I said earlier about not forcing your. Like, it's okay to have your own opinion, and you can think and say whatever you want.
Yep.
As long as you're responsible for what you say and what you like. If you say something to someone, then own it. But you can't force people to think or say what you want them to.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, yeah, she did lose her mind. She started abusing her and calling her a selfish cow and all this stuff.
I mean, that's a massive sense of entitlement, right? You know, I mean.
Yeah, big time.
But, okie dokie. Right, was there anything else you want to cover with me?
No. I think we'll leave it there. So thank you for coming on, Lee.
No worries.
Tell people where they can find you on Twitter.
Sorry, I'm very rarely on there, but Leigh Remedios, one word. Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm not on very often, but if you tag me on it, I'll respond. I expect at some point. Also, I'm going to do the conspiracy theory stuff and a few other bit of topic stuff you're doing, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's good. No, it's well, you can join me and Reese for a show, can you? When we come up with some conspiracy theories and stuff. Love them. I think. Well, the next one we're doing is MK Ultra, which is going to be quite a good one, I think.
Okay.
Cool. So, guys, you can find us on youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and other podcasting platforms. Facebook.com/Acecast Nation, and Twitter @Acecast_Nation. I may break the show into 2 parts. I don't know yet because it's a long monster one, but we'll see how it goes. And
it's been over 2 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 2 hours 15. It's one of my longest ever. Cool. thank you, Lee, for joining me, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Cheers for having me.
Thank you to everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.